Well, it is 5:17 on the morning of August 10th. We are packed up and ready to go.
Coddiwomple Overland is proudly powered by Dan Cummins Off-road, home of the Lifetime powertrain. Also in part by Overland Vehicle Systems, Faster Flate, and trail-rated coffee. Early on August morning in 2021, 3 Jeeps and a Dodge Power Wagon set out for a trip that we have been planning for almost a year. The plan was to spend the next 21 days in Utah and Colorado. We knew this trip was going to be challenging, but we didn't expect the challenges to start just inside the Kansas border. We had stopped to refuel, and Nancy and Alan's Jeep wouldn't start. After working to diagnose the issue and making a phone call to our friends at Dan Cummins Off-road, we decided that it was a fuel pump. Alan and Nancy wanted us to continue on with the trip, and they would catch up with us once they had repairs made. We reluctantly parted ways and drove late into the night trying to make our way to Colorado. We woke up the next morning to find ourselves still in Kansas. As we watched the fields and the windmill farms go by, we couldn't wait to see Colorado.
Welcome to Colorado.
As we made it to Colorado, it was time to take our first detour. I-70 was closed in Glen Canyon because of a major mudslide, so we decided to take the 2-lane on into Colorado Springs. When you get to Colorado Springs, you've got to stop at Sandy's Restaurant. Not only is it great food, but it has a very unique atmosphere. After a great lunch, it was finally time to start hitting some real mountains. We made our way towards 7 Mile Road just outside of Buena Vista. This will be our first night of camp. It didn't take long for us to start seeing some old cabins. These were the things that we were looking forward to seeing out here. We didn't have a specific campsite in mind. We didn't even know for sure if there were going to be any up here. But I tell you, we sure did get lucky. We started driving some little spur roads off of the main 7 Mile Road, and here's what we found.
Oh my.
They're right behind us. Oh my gosh. Now this is one of those epic campsites.
We'd have got here at noon and I'd camped here today.
My land, look at that. Back there. Where do we need to park? Let's stop and see where everybody wants to set up.
Yeah.
This was one of those campsites that you see in other people's videos and only dream about being able to get to. This first campsite was the very thing that all of us have been dreaming about for almost a year. We all tried to get camp set up as quickly as possible and dinner over with so we could sit and enjoy this amazing place. One thing we all realized by the next morning was the effect that altitude has on you. As we sat around and enjoyed our trail-rated coffee, we all discussed how camping our first night at 9,400 feet was probably not the best idea. Shortly after coffee and breakfast, we packed up. We took a little bit more time to do it this morning just because of the altitude and the lack of oxygen, but we then made our way on towards Utah. We continued our route along 7 Mile Road until we found Colorado 371. This is an absolutely beautiful drive along the Arkansas River.
Oh my goodness, look how beautiful it is.
We made our way past the Clear Creek Reservoir on our way towards Independence Pass. At a little over 12,000 feet in elevation, Independence Pass is the highest paved road in Colorado. This would also be the first of a couple different times that we cross over the Continental Divide on this trip. As we made our way down the west side of Independence Pass, the road got pretty narrow in places. Soon after that, we found ourselves in the middle of Aspen, Colorado. Aspen was very touristy and crowded. We made our way out of there as quick as we could. As we made our way out of Aspen, we set our sights on Utah. The sun was getting lower in the sky, and it was also getting a whole lot prettier. Just outside of Green River, we got off of the pavement in Utah for the very first time. The terrain and different colors looked like we had stepped onto a completely different planet. We were now in the lower San Rafael Swell. We were on our way to our first real planned campsite. I've been telling everybody what an incredible campsite Trialf Cove Bend was going to be, but by this time it was dark and they were just going to have to take my word for it until in the morning. After we got to camp and got it set up, we were treated to an amazing meteor shower. The next morning's daybreak treated us to some unbelievable views of the Green River. The views of the rocks and the river was so amazing that some of us could just do nothing but sit and stare. After a few fresh pots of Dalton coffee and an amazing breakfast, it was time to pack up and see what Utah had to show us. But before we could leave, we had to pry Kelly out of his chair so we could get packed up and take off. After we got all packed up, we were off to explore the rest of the San Rafael Swell. Along the way, we stopped to check out places like Horseshoe Canyon. As we made our way down into this wash, we stirred up a few antelope, as they were taking refuge in the shade. We decided to take their cue and have lunch in the only shade that we had found in this whole desert. After a fairly quick lunch, we continued our way through the lower San Rafael swell, making our way towards the Temple Wash. Along the way, we stopped to see several old relics, such as this old spring where they had dammed up water and then channeled it to where they wanted it. On the west side of the swell, closer to the mountains, the road was getting more and more interesting. You could tell by these dry washes that the water tends to get pretty angry here when it rains. The further we went along this trail, the more we realized that there wasn't a whole lot of vehicle traffic, and there was a lot of water that had been through here fairly recently. By far, one of the favorite parts of everybody on this trip were the slot canyons. This one was no different. It was actually the first big one that we went through, and it was Temple Wash. Mike said he kept looking up on the rims to make sure that we wasn't going to get ambushed. This canyon was the quietest the radios had been in several days. Everybody was just looking in awe and trying to take it all in.
Oh my goodness, look how beautiful it is. The trail through Temple Wash and on around towards Temple Mountain was definitely one of the highlights of the trip. While the trail going up towards Temple Mountain was not super technical, it was still more difficult than anything we had had so far. I'm probably going to say this a million times throughout this video series, but the views just kept getting better and better. We made our way on up towards Temple Mountain. As we crossed the ridge, we found ourselves going into where there was an old mine. From the amount of stuff left behind here, it was obvious that this was a pretty big operation.
Whatever they had mined from this location, they had done it for several years. There had been a lot of dirt moved around here. After spending some time checking out this old mine, it was time to make our way on around Temple Wash looking for petroglyphs. On the way to the petroglyphs, the road got a little bit, well, as Deb calls it, tilty. After the tilty section, we were back on much better maintained roads and just around the corner from the petroglyphs. Right there. Petroglyphs. Next, we were on our way past Goblin Valley and on into Wild Horse Canyon. Our plan was to camp in Wild Horse Canyon, but there wasn't a whole lot of shade and it was well over 100 degrees. We decided to keep moving on past Wild Horse Canyon, and that is when we found ourselves in a whole different planet. This is what happens to your DJI at 40 miles an hour when it hits a rock. Yep, that was the end of Oscar the drone. If you follow us on Facebook or Instagram, you'll know that we had to order another one while we were out here. After the catastrophic drone crash, we made our way along West Factory Road, continuing to look for a campsite for the night. I guess we could have pulled over here just anywhere and camped, but it was still way too hot. We just kept traveling.
Top of the hills, you go left or right?
Left. By this time, we had made our way almost out to Cathedral Valley Road. Mike's Jeep had been throwing a transmission temperature light over the last couple days. We decided tomorrow we probably ought to go back to Green River, find him an auxiliary transmission cooler and get it fixed. We hung a left when we got out of Cathedral Valley Road and made our way towards Hanksville. After a quick air up by the faster Flate and Deb and Laura playing with the lizard, we made our way on into Hanksville. If you ever want to shop in a cave, here's the place to do it. After gathering up some supplies, we found a nice camp just outside of Hanksville. This was where we would spend the night and have some dinner. On the menu tonight, spaghetti and meatballs. Please stay tuned for the next episode when we venture through the Henry Mountains and get caught in a hailstorm. Until then, please check out Dan Cummins Off-road on Instagram, Facebook, or at their website, www.dancumminsoffroad.com. And until next time, see ya.